Today on Aspiring Women, she fought the silent killer not once, but twice.
I need to tell you that the doctor said that it's terminal. And she said, so I'm gonna die? You know, I could hardly talk then, you know, when she asked that.
God pulls one woman back from the brink of death.
Well, welcome to AW. Today we're talking about a serious subject, and that's cancer, ovarian cancer. And they call it the silent killer because it's very hard to detect. Mm-hmm. You know, when you have breast cancer, you can go in and have a mammogram. With ovarian cancer, it's very hard to know if you have it.
Well, there are no symptoms that appear until you're like in stage 3 or 4.
That's what happened
right.
with my aunt.
It's very, very
and
dangerous.
it is also the 5th leading cause of death in women, which is very interesting.
That's amazing, because
yeah.
you never hear anything about it, really. You hear a lot about breast cancer.
Right, and other types of cancers. But you know, when you think about cancer, you also think about healing, and healing and miraculous healing. I know a lot of us have people that we love who have struggled with cancer, and we've prayed for their healing. But how would you define a miracle healing?
Well, I think it's something that takes a supernatural move of God, something that doesn't happen in the natural.
Yeah, I think it's a circumvention of all natural circumstances.
Oh,
well said.
Well said.
That's
You
a
must be a
mouthful.
writer.
Yes, it surpasses the abilities and capabilities of human. But you know, the bigger question is, even though we know God can, the big question is, will He?
Yeah.
Faith is different from hope.
Yes.
That's good. That's good. Well, there are many women battling with ovarian cancer today, and statistically, many women will lose that fight. Pat Rendy was in midlife when she found herself in the fight against this silent killer, but she had armor for the battle, and here's her story. From the time she was a child, church was important to Pat Rendy. Pat met her husband Chuck at a Christian gathering, and they married. They raised 2 children, a boy, David, and a girl, Mary. Both children were in high school in 1991 when a trip to the doctor took everyone in Pat's family by surprise.
I was first diagnosed with ovarian cancer, and I was very shocked to find out it was cancer because there was no history of cancer in my family whatsoever. I started crying when I first got the news, and at that time I prayed, and I just felt that the Lord would take me through every step that was needed to correct the situation. The doctor prescribed that I have surgery, immediate surgery, which was to remove the tumor and also complete hysterectomy at that time.
You take it step by step, and you know, by 5 years, if she's cancer-free, you know, your chances of getting cancer are the same as anyone else.
Pat endured 6 months of chemo that resulted in a clean bill of health that lasted for 12 years. In January of 2003, you were experiencing some tiredness. You went to see a doctor, and what happened?
At that consultation, I got the sad news that there was a tumor in my body behind the stomach, in front of the pancreas.
I didn't think that was possible because she had her ovaries taken out, so how can you have ovarian cancer?
He said that because of the situation, it was an inoperable tumor. So the treatment suggested was to start with chemotherapy, which he felt should take care of the tumor.
Now, Pat, here you are again. You've already gone through this one time, and you were healed. How were you feeling at that time?
I felt the previous battle of cancer, the Lord and I had defeated it, so I felt we were heading the same direction.
During that summer, after your chemotherapy treatments had taken place, you and your husband went to a prayer meeting. Tell us about what happened at that prayer meeting.
There was a man there who I did not know prior to that evening. And during the course of the prayer meeting, that gentleman came over to me and he said, Pat, I know we haven't met before. My name is Joe. And the Lord told me that everything's going to be okay. You will be healed. Physically, my body was slowly going down, but spiritually at that point, I felt an uplifting in my spirits.
That word of encouragement helped Pat emotionally, but after 2 more body-ravaging cancer treatments, the news was not good.
We came into the office, the doctor said the results of the CAT scan or MRI show no change. Our hearts dropped.
I started crying because I felt there was no place else to go.
Well, can you imagine after being free for so long?
They say you're cured
12 years.
after 5
to
years.
go
You're supposed to
back
be
and
cured.
yeah, and it's more deadly when it reoccurs.
Yes.
That had to be awfully frightening.
And that her ovaries had been removed.
Yes.
I mean, that's another thing. How can you have ovarian cancer when your ovaries have been removed? But
Cancer is such a
the cancer
sinister thing.
cells-
It just stays there dormant sometimes.
Yes, but she had such faith. Even at that moment, you know, they are the dearest people. And she said, I made a decision then to give this again to the Lord and to trust Him with the circumstance again. And she had already gone through the whole process once.
Well, that was really the only choice, right?
Right.
When we return, we'll learn what was next for Pat as she continued to battle with cancer. Welcome back. After surviving ovarian cancer in 1991, Pat Rendy was shocked to find herself with the same illness 12 years later. She endured 2 rounds of chemotherapy with no change in the tumor. Radiation followed, but her health continued to decline.
Though chemotherapy had worked 12 years earlier, this time Pat thought she was out of treatment options. But then her doctor suggested concentrated radiation as a final solution.
Radiation is very tough on the body, and she was getting very fatigued as the time went on.
And she was getting sicker and sicker.
It appeared that way, yeah. I mean, all the outward signs, she talked less and she could hardly get around. And in fact, towards the end of the treatments, which would be near Thanksgiving of that year, she really didn't even want to finish them up. Or not that she didn't want to finish, but she didn't have the strength to get there.
The radiation proved unsuccessful, and by December 2003, Pat was completely unaware of her surroundings and nearly catatonic. Chuck became her full-time caregiver and put everything else in his life on hold.
Things were very tough in that Pat wasn't talking anymore. You could barely get an answer out of her, sometimes a yes or a no. It was total concentration on providing for whatever her needs would be. I fed her. When it came to drinking, as things went downhill, she couldn't even drink out of a straw. She didn't have the energy. And I put a motion sensor over our bed so that if she would get up, because sometimes she would just get up on her own, and if I'd be sleeping, I wouldn't know. So this way, if she moved, 2 floodlights would come on and wake me up to help her.
And how were you able to work? Were you working during this time?
I couldn't, no. By December, it was pretty much, we weren't doing any work at all anymore. It was simply do what is the most important thing, and that's to take care of your wife right now.
With Pat's health rapidly declining, the doctors could only offer one option.
He said, you know, you really should get going with hospice. He basically informed me that it was terminal. And I said, well, what does that mean exactly? He said, well, it could be weeks, it could be months.
So you ended up calling the hospice for help.
Hospice was great. They had a nurse come in to see how things are progressing, see what kind of help we need.
It definitely looked like she was very close to end of life. In the situation of her state of mind, her physical state, she could not communicate, she could not feed herself. She had a swollen abdomen, swollen extremities, and looked to be very much appropriate for end of life. 2 to 4 weeks is what I was guessing she probably had left.
During that time, did you tell Pat that her situation was terminal, that it was very serious? And what was her response?
I said, you know, I need to tell you that the doctor said that it's terminal. And she said, so I'm gonna die? You know, I could hardly talk then, you know, when she asked that. And I don't think I said yes. I kind of wiggled my way around like, well, you know, there's always a miracle. Or
Did you start to prepare for a funeral for Pat?
it's so hard to explain. Your mind kind of goes back and forth. For a minute, you picture her in a coffin, and gosh, you know, what is that going to be like? And what should I be doing now? How do I prepare? But one of the things that came to mind was some years back, her and I had taken some guitar lessons. But one of the things we did was we learned how to play this simple melody, Beautiful, Beautiful Blue Eyes, I think was the name of it. We changed the words to Jesus, my Jesus, I love you. I love you with all of my heart. Jesus, my Jesus, I love you. I thank you that we're never apart. And I said, for some reason this came to mind, that I would like that to be sung at the funeral mass.
Pat loved singing in her church choir, which was directed by Deb Guscott. Knowing this would be Pat's last Christmas, Deb wanted the choir to do something special for her.
We came on a Sunday afternoon after one of our services and, you know, trudged over there in the snow and brought our jingle bells and, you know, we sang a cappella.
This was one of the few times where she kind of sat up, you know, on the end of her chair, you know, and she watched and tried to join in a little bit.
It was really a miracle to witness, knowing that she hadn't been able to speak at all that week. The healing power of music, you know, that's a gift to us all, that freely given that the Lord gives us. But, you know, we were told that not to hold out hope, that part of the urgency of getting there was that she might not make it through the new year.
Wow. You know, I was so impressed with what I learned about hospice. And even Pat said she didn't want to go to hospice. She thought it was someplace she had to go, but she understood that hospice comes to you. They came to her home, and they dealt with her emotional needs, her physical needs, taught them how to care for her, bathe her. And it was really an amazing support to him. He said he couldn't have done it without them.
Yeah, well, I was really impressed with him because my uncle went through the same thing, and he really stepped up to the plate, and he was there caring for my aunt to the very end.
But
It's a lot of work.
Can you imagine
It
how
is.
hard it is, though, to plan the funeral of the person
Yes.
you love more than anyone else, and you just have
While
to...
they're alive.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's why hospice was there to help him even plan the funeral. They talked to him and taught him and gave him some good, solid information.
Pretty amazing. Well, Pat was on the doorstep of death, but God was about to do something miraculous. Pat Rendy's doctor and hospice nurse said she only had a few weeks left to live. Her husband, Chuck, prepared for her funeral as friends came to say goodbye. But as Chuck had once said to Pat, there's always a chance of a miracle.
In December of 2003, Pat's condition continued to worsen. But on the doorstep of 2004, something fresh was in the works for Pat.
That evening, Pat said a few words to me. I don't remember if it was a question or if she just made a statement. And it kind of looked like shocked. You know, she hasn't done that in a long time.
She kind of started talking more, being more responsive and a little more engaged in conversation. And from that point on is when she continued to improve.
And I thought, well, you know, I've read some books that the death process, and sometimes people have a little comeback and so forth.
At first, Chuck thought Pat was just having a good day. But as time went on, those good days grew in number.
All of a sudden, I was aware of the fact that I was talking. I was aware of the fact that I was home.
Each day she kept talking. By 3 to 4 days later, she picked up her own fork and started eating. And it's like, you know, this is pretty amazing.
I remember my husband, Chuck, taking me out on the prairie path, which is where I like to walk. I was noticing the outdoors. I was starting to do things, normal things around the house that most people do.
When friends and relatives saw your progressive recovery, what was their reaction to that?
We had a miracle, that the Lord gave us a miracle because they knew how ill I was. As a matter of fact, there were a couple people I made phone calls to, and they were shocked to hear my voice because they thought that the next voice that they would hear would be my husband, Chuck, letting them know when the funeral was going to be.
One of those phone calls was made to Deb Guscott. When Deb's caller ID indicated it was from the Rendys, she expected to hear bad news.
Hi, Deb. And I was like, and it was Pat. Much to my great surprise, and so of course there was a big scream that I let out. So I was beyond shocked and very, very grateful. It was like, oh my gosh, well, there's a miracle right there. I've just witnessed a miracle. It's pretty exciting.
It was fun surprising people, you know, in that way.
People are shocked. You are walking, breathing, eating, getting stronger, more independent. February 14th was a very special day for you. What happened on that day?
Well, February 14th, our church was having a Valentine's Day dance. And I was feeling well enough to go to it.
So we went and sat with friends and we ate, and she was doing well and decided should we get up and start
Spin
dancing
you around
with
the floor a little bit.
And it really shocked all the people from our parish to see me, the person that they knew was on their deathbed just a few weeks before, and here I am, I'm at a dinner dance and actually dancing there too.
Obviously, she was the talk of the evening, you know, people seeing that who, some of them may have heard that it was over with, so to speak, and then seeing her out there on the dance floor. It was very amazing.
Pat's recovery shocked her doctors and left hospice in a quandary.
They weren't sure what to do because you don't release people from hospice on a normal situation. Sherry, our hospice nurse, said, I'm going to have to find out how to do this. Yeah.
You know, we discharge patients from hospice, but I would say not usually with an end-of-life ovarian cancer diagnosis. Her situation is a little unique just due to her diagnosis and how advanced she was and the miracle of turning around.
Pat continued to grow stronger. She started avidly walking on the prairie path again and returned to her church choir.
I know that was Pat's goal, to be singing the Hallelujah chorus in the Easter choir. And sure enough, you know, we had her there. And we didn't sing the Hallelujah chorus from Handel's Messiah, but we were singing plenty of Alleluias, and it seemed quite fitting.
I was really elated and actually almost started crying when I first started to sing, because it's a way to praise and worship God, and I hope I can always do that. I'm still in the choir to today, and it's always one of my greatest loves, that He's gifted me with a voice, and I've been able to use it to give Him honor.
Another way the Rendys continue to honor God is through a story Chuck wrote called An Easter Miracle.
Pat always carries a couple of copies folded up in her purse. When she meets people, shares with them, and at the appropriate time comes up, she tells them about her miracle.
Chuck and Pat are not afraid to say yes when the Lord comes knocking, as a healing tool or as a ministering tool, as a witnessing tool, whatever vessel He needs us to be. It's really important to have the courage to say yes.
I do believe God healed me for the purpose of showing that God is alive and well in each of us, that He is working today, that He does do miracles now and today and every day, and many miracles in our lives from small to large.
Well, you know what I'm touched by here is this theme of praise and worship throughout. You know, the choir comes to visit her. There's this whole thing about the song. She's back to singing for the Lord. And I believe there really is healing power in praise and worship.
And music. Oh,
Yes,
absolutely.
yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And their simple faith was so precious to me.
Surrender.
And they surrendered. They trusted the Lord, but they still had hope,
Yeah,
which
and-
is a wonderful balance to have.
And faith. Of course, you can have all the faith you want. Everybody doesn't get healed of cancer. I mean, we know that, and we need to encourage people that even if they lose a loved one, but you know, we had a friend who had terminal cancer, but he lived much longer than what they expected him to do. But he was okay if the Lord decided to take him, and he did everything he could to stay alive. It was like a seamless transition between life and death.
Well, this is not the end of the journey, and there's always hope. We'll be right back with some final thoughts.
Visit our website at aspiringwomen.tv to find more resources about today's topic.
Well, there is a test out now to test for ovarian cancer. It's called CA125, which is kind of a funny term, but
it's a blood test,
It's
right?
a blood test, and you can see if you have elevated risk. It doesn't say yes or no, but it says if you're higher at higher risk.
Well, and we should be cognizant. We should always be on top of these things.
Yeah, and it's a simple blood test. I mean, why not get it? You know, you don't want to live in fear, but on the other hand, it's just like a man getting a PSA test. You can
Right.
watch it,
Right.
monitor it.
And you can pray for hope. I think, you know, as we've talked today about a very serious situation of cancer, there's always hope.
That's true. And you keep praying and you let God have the last word.
That's so true, Michelle. There are times when people call a situation dead, hopeless, over. Yet in the New Testament, when people said Jairus' daughter was dead, Jesus replied, "She's only sleeping." The immediate response from the people was laughter, so he asked them to leave. Then he said, "Daughter, rise up." And she did. How many times have you believed a situation is hopeless or dead? Possibly after hearing Pat's story today, you will experience within your heart the rising of hope. Today could be the day that Jesus demonstrates a miracle in your life. We'll see you next time.